Vidya Bandari has been informed that she will not be delegating her position as a delegate during the NECPA Secretariat meeting. Representatives from the 10th National Convention will be designated to represent only the Legislative Assembly at Tucson, Kathmandu. The Legislative Assembly delegates were also chosen during the meeting, which took place from 2 p.m. to midnight on Thursday. According to the organizers, consider friends who were not present at the 10th National Congress and later came to the Central Committee or Central Body as potential representatives, but they are not required to be representatives of the Legislative Assembly. The Secretariat has passed a resolution, which is now being determined by the Politburo and the Central Committee, and it appears that former President Vidya Bandari will not be delegating to the Legislative Assembly. The Legislative Assembly was suggested to include the leaders nominated to the Central Committee or Body after the 10th National Congress, the new leaders of people's organizations, and the district leadership in the nomination process. Deputy Secretary General Jaiwali stated that the absence of a nominee provision in the legislation did not result in deciding whether to proceed with the matter, as there is no nomination provision.
KP Oli and God Pokherel are greeted by God as they leave. Now the Secretariat of NECPA met for more than 10 hours to discuss the Legislative Assembly agenda. At 2 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, the meeting commenced and concluded at midnight, during which the party's legislative proposal was discussed for the most part. Vice President Vishnu Prasad Paul presented a draft proposal to the leaders, which involved eliminating the senior vice president position and decreasing the size of the functionaries and central committee. The meeting ultimately approved the proposal that would have had 1 chairman, 3 vice chairmen, 1 secretary general, 1 deputy secretary general and 5 secretaries. The proposal to create a permanent standing committee with 15 members was unanimously approved by Deputy Secretary General Pradeep Jayawali, who stated that the number of permanent members would not exceed 15. Despite the interest expressed in the 70-year-old age limit and 2-term proposals, all leaders have kept their mouths shut. President K.P. Sharma Oli and Senior Vice President Ishak Pokherel were in disagreement over Section 64 of the legislation, which was discussed during a debate between them. Senior Vice President Pokherel commended the 3 times printed legislation, discussing the decision of the First Legislative Assembly and the situation of its subjects with the 10th National Assembly. Oli protested when Pokherel spoke while he was speaking. God was reportedly shaken after Oli refused to share Kana Thapa's story, as reported by those who knew him. Oli ceased to be a speaker after that. Oli was advised to resign, as per Pokherel's words. During his speech, Pokherel stated that there is no ideology between you and the party, and your style of working with workers and people is unacceptable. Pokherel suggested that Oli should step down from the leadership in order to strengthen democratic practices within the party, according to his own statement. The Prime Minister was attentive to all this and understood that the leadership could not be removed. The party insisted that it was not going to surrender because it still required its support. It was reported that the meeting on the legislation was also a lengthy one, with representatives discussing the name of former President Vidya Bandari for hours. President only requested additional discussion between the Legislative Convention and the Central Committee meeting, but the leaders did not speak. We should discuss it more thoroughly about Vidya Bandari, having referred to the President before leaving.
The scheduled time for the Political Bureau meeting will be postponed by 2 hours. The Secretariat's meeting has been postponed for 2 hours due to the Politburo of the National Assembly of Nepal NEP meeting, which was delayed until midnight at Tucson, Kathmandu. Dr. Visham Apasar, the Central Office Secretary, announced that the Politburo meeting has been rescheduled for Friday afternoon at 1. Politburo meeting was called on Friday at 11 a.m. He stated that the Secretariat meeting was postponed to 2 hours due to the Politburo's long session.
The initial report on the Air India plane crash advised to refrain from prematurely drawing conclusions. The Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau (ARIB) has been advised by Air India to refrain from drawing quick conclusions based on preliminary reports of the plane crash, as it is currently investigating the incident. The ARIB Director General, G.V. Jin Yugandhar, told PTI that international media is publishing reports of blaming pilots on unproven evidence, which is responsible. A Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner flight from Ahmedabad to Gatwick Airport in London crashed on 12 June, resulting in the death of 260 individuals.